period of about 3 years in 1974, 5, 6, and 7, we did a lot of overflights of Cuba out of Beale. Back then, also, the El Salvador was getting a little gutsy down in the Central America, and we flew some operational missions down there as well. But basically, Beale is all training missions, other than those I just mentioned. Training simulator and everything was held at Beale. That's where all the SR71s were located, and along with T-38s, and the world's one and only simulator was at Beale Air Force Base. Our squadron was called the 1st SRS. We had 9 combat-ready crews. That's all our squadron. I mean, most squadrons, wasn't F4s, you had maybe 40 pilots and 40 backseaters. Here, it's a very small cadre of 9 pilots and 9 navigators. We all had to go with the top secret clearance and a special access required. It's called a SAR clearance called Senior Crown. Senior Crown is a security clearance for anyone that has the need to know about the SR71. Whoops. This picture goes back to 1967. This is the original picture, the original cadre of crew members who were selected to fly the SR71. Now, if you look in the back, is my mouse working? You see the mouse going?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay, all in the back row here are 25 pilots and 25 navigators. That's how many they hired originally back in 67, because they had no idea how often they were going to use it. So it dwindled down from that number right there of 25 crew members down to, when I got to the squadron in 1974, 9 pilots and 9 navigators. There's another shot of Beale. Each one of these hangars in the back holds an SR71. We had 2 tanker squadrons, KC-135Q models, that were designated to be our only airplanes that could fly and refuel the SR71. They had the capacity of special tanks throughout the fuselage, had the JP4 for them, and also could isolate JP7 for the SR71. That was our fuel, JP7. Special fuel, no other airplane used it, has a very high flash point. And I'll talk about the temperatures it's going to get up to later on. We also owned all the U-2 operations. We had a squadron of them, and they all fly around the globe. And we had 12 T-38s on base where the pilots of the SR and the pilots of the U-2 keep their flying skills maintained at a peak, at a very low rate compared to flying the SR or the U-2. We flew the T-38s to keep our skills maintained. You could fly it 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, whatever you wanted, pretty much. Talk about the mission. Basically, as I'm sure many of you know, it's gather intelligence all around the globe. We did it for 7 presidents: the CIA, NSA, DIA, Pentagon, all those U.S. Washington, D.C. arena, that any intelligence agency, generally, we worked for them. All of our operational missions were flown out of 2 locations only. Now, remember, I mentioned Beale about doing El Salvador and overflights of Cuba. Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, Japan, is detachment number 1. RF Mildenhall, which we're going to fly out of now in a minute, is detachment number 4. And if you just think about Okinawa, Japan, and the location of Mildenhall, they're about halfway around the globe from each other. And that allowed us to cover the entire Northern Hemisphere with in-flight refueling by flying. We had 3 airplanes all the time at Okinawa, and we had 2 at Mildenhall all the time. Each of the deaths, I don't want you to get the impression of, just 10, 50, 20 people. It's about 200 men and women. And it takes a lot of operation to get an airplane ready for the next day for a flight. You see a lot of people in white shirts. Most of those are civilian tech reps, we call them, technical representatives. They come right from the manufacturer of our sensors. Since our sensors were one of a kind, no other airplane used them, it was cheaper to go ahead and have the contractors from the factories that actually built the sensors maintain it rather than hire and have the Air Force do it. So we had a lot of civilians at both locations to maintain all the sensors. That's a shot of Met 4 over the Mildenhall. That was their hatch. You can't see it very well, but that's me pointing to the double two. There's a dart going into the double two for representing depth 4. Just a little bit about the operations. Like I said, we kept 3 on Okinawa and 2 at Mildenhall. A lot of people say, why 3 over at Okinawa and just 2 at Mildenhall? Why not 3 and 3 or 2 and 2? It turns out, I'm sure many of you know or realize, Okinawa is just a very small island in the Pacific Ocean. And because of that, all of the salt water created corrosion and havoc with any airplane, and not just the SR, but all the corrosion control on Okinawa was tremendous for all the airplanes. So we had 3 over there because they had to go through a rehab because of the salt water eroding things, as opposed to Mildenhall. Each location, we had 12 sorties per month per detachment. So that's 24 sorties all around the globe. We kept 3 crews at Okinawa and 3 at Mildenhall all the time. We were there for 6 weeks tours, and we had 3 crews at each location. Every 6 weeks, we would swap out a new location at Mildenhall, or a new crew at Mildenhall, and a new crew over at RAF Mildenhall as well. For my 7 years of flying the SR, my schedule was like 6 weeks at Okinawa. I'm sorry, 6 weeks at Beale, at home with your family. Then you go 6 weeks to over to Okinawa, back to Beale for 6 weeks, over to Mildenhall for 6 weeks, back to home for 6 weeks, Okinawa, Mildenhall. Every time 6 weeks, and that really played havoc with our what you call your biorhythms. For every mission, 2 crews were planned. We had a primary; they were the ones that were going to fly the mission, and we always had a backup crew, and we named them the mobile crew, and you'll see why here in a minute. They were the eyes and ears of the primary crew. They took care of all the ancillary duties, so the primary crew could stay focused all the time on just the mission. Anything that popped up that had to do with the airplane or changes, that backup crew handled the problem, and then they would come to you if need be, and let you know what's going on. But they tried to be a filter, so we only got the really necessary notifications. That's why we call them the mobile crew. That's the backup crew. They're in the car, and it has a lot of UHF, HF, VHF radios. It's got a lot of classified information in a secure bag in the back. And this crew becomes the eyes and the ears once you get into the cockpit. They take care of anything that happens and crops up. If in fact, I'll get to it in a minute. Day before the mission, or maybe 2 or 3 days before, these are the mission planners, captains, lieutenant colonels, majors, highly experienced to work with our airplane, the SR71, in planning the flight path to get the right intelligence at the right time. Now, you would think it'd be a nightmare for these guys to work and clear out all the airspace and all the airplanes to fly the SR, but when you think about it, once you get above 60,000 feet anywhere on this globe, we are the only ones that own the airspace. So 60,000 and above, and we normally cruise at 70, 75, 80,000 feet, there's nothing up there. So these mission planners, they had a lot of latitude in where they can make the airplane turn, come left, come right, or hold straight and level. So basically the entire atmosphere above 60,000 feet was all theirs. We're going to take off at 8 o'clock for this mission going up to Murmansk. Obviously, you don't want to get predictable, get a random day and a random time. Day before, both the primary and the backup crew, the mobile crew, they would go over to the mission planners, and you'd go over the entire mission. And Don Emmons, who was my backseater, the way we did it, we would set the map, we would put the map down, we'd have our flight plan, and we would follow all along the entire route of where we're flying, and we would give it a what if. What if I'm low on fuel here? What if I see Sam's fired here? What if I see MiGs over here? What if so you do the whole mission, and you give it a what if. So you know when the day comes to fly it, the next day, you have a good plan on all these what ifs. This 8 o'clock takeoff, we're going to go to bed at 9 o'clock. We were legally allowed to take uppers and downers, uppers to stay awake and downers to get you go to sleep. I personally, for my 7 years of flying it, I never needed them. I go to sleep easy and I wake up easy. Some people don't. So we had the flight surgeon, every crew member was certified for a specific pill for an upper or downer, since we're all a little bit different physiologically. So everyone had in their flight records, their medical records, an upper or downer pill that could be taken if needed to get to bed or to wake up. But like I said, most guys didn't take them. I didn't know of many that did. Now, also for this is going to be wake up about 5 o'clock. You'll meet your RSO out in the airplane. I'm sorry, out of the VOQ, and you'll get in your car and you'll fly or drive over to a location at each Okinawa or Mildenhall that had a secure location where we would have to eat a mandatory steak and eggs meal. It was called a high protein, low residue meal for obvious. You'll see here with the pressure suit why you want low residue for obvious reasons. But this was our meal every night or every morning before the flight. Briefing 6:15 at the detachment. You'd have the det commander, all the intel folks, the primary and the backup crew. You'd have the crew chief for the airplane and also the maintenance officer. All the mission planners who build our missions would be there, and the tankers would be represented by the boss. Weatherman and anyone else who had a vested interest in this mission has to be at the briefing. And once the briefing's over with, everyone goes to the four winds, and there's no more talking on telephones or bricks or anything. It has to be one-to-one verbally, because the bad guys have listening ships right off of Okinawa and right off of RAF Mildenhall out in the channel. We go radio silent. From the time we get in the airplane and we come back, you may come back 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 8, 9, 10 hours later, you never, ever talk to a soul. It's all planned to be radio silent, the rendezvous and everything. Now, with that being said, if you need to break radio silence for some reason, you were allowed to do it. But quite often, and most of the times, we very seldom ever had to break radio silence. A former crew member, a former pilot, I should say, of the SR71 was called a tower officer. When he's in the briefing, he's listening to everything. He goes up to the tower at RAF Mildenhall, or Okinawa, if the case, because our tower personnel were not cleared into our top secret mission. So we didn't want to get them cleared in, and neither did the intelligence folks. So the tower officer became our eyes and ears up in the towers. And if we had a problem, if we had to take the barrier, we had an engine aboard, or we had coming in for an emergency, the tower officer will then tell the tower people and the ground control people what to do. Mission monitor was another former navigator on the SR71, and when the briefing's over with, he would take the map of your route of flight, the computer flight plan, and he would take a stopwatch. And he would go over to a very secret location on both Mildenhall and over at Okinawa. And he is the only person that had access now to worldwide secure phones. He could pick up a phone at Okinawa and get a hotline right to SAC headquarters or to Beale Air Force Base. And the same thing happened over at Mildenhall. This mission monitor had his phone. He could go right directly to wherever he needed to. So he became our eyes and ears, and he's going to follow us all around the route. If I have any emergency while I'm, 4,000 miles away from him, on the HF radio, we give a coded message, and then he can then notify what we're doing. We're going to abort, come home, we've lost an engine, we've had SAMs fired. So we can give that in a coded mission, and he can then get it off to the right people on a hard phone. On this mission now, this is the map. Get much bigger, but this is England. RAF Mildenhall sits right about where D is here in England. We're going to go out over the North Sea. We're going to refuel right off of Norway here. That's where the 3 tankers will be. And then we're going to start a climb and acceleration By the time you hit the Arctic Circle, you'll probably be up around close to 70,000 feet at Mach 3. We'll continue in here, just coming over the shoreline. We'll image off to the right from 80,000 feet into Murmansk. Right in here is where the subpeds are. And then we'll do a 180-degree turn back in the Barents Sea and come back and then image them coming on our way back. And then back down, start a descent over Norway, get fuel. Now, we get fuel if we were going to go to another mission. Quite often we'd do that, then we'd go into a Baltic Sea mission, and there we'd come out, refuel, and we would do a Germany mark where we'd do a turn all the way around here in all these Soviet satellite countries all around the side. This is back then. Now, this map isn't quite accurate for what today's geographic is. Or sometimes you would come right back to Mildenhall after this. This called be a one looper. This would be a two looper. And if you do Germany, that would be three loopers. And you come back into England. Most of the refuelings would take place out over the North Sea. I show this picture. I don't want you to get the impression that the SR holds all of these at the same time, but these are all the sensors, the jammers, the recorders the SR can hold. So depending on the mission needs, this is called the chine. It goes down the side from the nose and down to both sides. That's called the chine. Underneath it here, the chine, there's 4 bays on the left side and there's 4 bays over on the right side. Now I'll show you a bay in the next picture. Each one of these bays will be holding either a camera, a jammer, a recorder, and all the bays, depending on where the mission's going. Here's one of the big sensors. That's a camera. Things about the perspective here. That's probably about 8 feet long, 8 feet long. Here's one of the chines up into one of the bays. You can see the insulation. Once they take it and zap it up here, it goes right on up like an elevator on those little wires, and then they lock it up and it'll have its own electronics and its own air conditioning. The nose is a complete remove and replace nose. That's a dummy nose, nothing in it. And that'd be used for just going back and forth. But to get intelligence, we had a radar imaging system up in the nose. It's called ASARS. Very, very accurate. It's with a radar beam, it bounces it down and it picks up the reflection. And we can get down to about 12-inch resolution, all weather, day or night with this camera, which made it very useful. This is the brains of the airplane. It's called the ANS, Astro Navigational System, ANS. We nicknamed it R2-D2 from the movie. This big container, inside of it, it has a computer that has a chronometer, a clock, accurate to 100th of a second. It's got the Julian date of the year in the sequence, like January 1st is 1, January 2nd is 2, January 3 is 3, all the way around to 365. It's got the Julian date. It's got the date of the year. It's got the time of the day down to 100th of a second. And it's got inside of it a catalog of the 12 brightest stars. I'm sorry, of the 64 brightest stars in the hemisphere, of the Northern Hemisphere. So with that 64-star catalog, inside of there is a telescope. If you can see inside of R2-D2, look at this top little thing here. There's a highly polished piece of quartz glass. And inside of here is a telescope. And this telescope sits on a gimbal platform inside of R2-D2. And it goes into what we call a ever expanding rectangular search travel. It starts out real small, gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And by the time you pull out of the hangar, taxi on a relatively clear day, within about 10 minutes of taxiing out, you will then get what's called a starlight on our Astro tracker. And that means we will now be relying on R2-D2 to navigate the airplane. It would always keep the SR at Mach 3 speeds anywhere in the globe within 300 feet left of course and 300 feet right of course, which is pretty darn good for something that's moving at 2,000 miles an hour. Did a very, very good job. And the reason it has to be that accurate, because all our sensors are based on where R2D2 is at the time. So if you're off by 300 feet or more either way, you could be missing the targets. After that briefing's over with, everyone goes to the four winds. The crew now, they go to a secure place at the operations where they have a flight doctor, and they give you a mission physical before every flight in the airplane. Even when we did practice ones at Beale Air Force Base, every flight in the airplane, you had to have a physical. Not a biggie. They do your blood pressure, they do your temperature, they record what time you went to bed, what time you woke up, what your meal was the night before, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you pass this, then you're good to go as a crew. Now, let's say his temperature was too high or too low for the mission. This is where these guys would now be grounded as a crew. We don't mix and match crews. We're not going to call in another backseater or another pilot to augment them. They get grounded as a crew, and now the backup crew who did all the mission planning and everybody go, they would then be called in and take over the mission. And you, as the sickie, would then be the one to take over and do all the mobile acts all the way through the whole mission. Pressure suit operation, real quick here. It's not pressurized, weighs about 50 pounds. Of that 50 pounds, you're going to wear, I'm guessing, but I think about 35, maybe 30 pounds is in this neck ring. Very, very heavy metal ring. And once you put the helmet on, it gets really heavy on your shoulders after about 4 or 5 hours just resting on it. What I would do to keep the shoulders, you can inflate your suit while you're in the cockpit. You can blow it up to as much as you want. And about every 30 minutes, I just blow it up just to get that weight off my shoulders. Each suit, $230,000. Every crew member had a primary and you had a backup suit just in case the primary wasn't sealed adequately for the mission. You still had time to get into the backup. From the time you started engines until you came back, 5, 10 hours, you're going to be breathing 100% oxygen in the helmet. Now, I don't want you, the 100% oxygen does not go through the entire suit. It's contained up here in the pressure suit helmet. Now, you'll see a closer view and you'll see a rubber seal, and that's where it's being maintained. The reason for 100% oxygen is that they don't want you to get the bends up there, and 100% oxygen precludes you from getting the bends. You know, when scuba divers go down in the water, and if they come up too fast, you can get the bends to the point where it's really debilitating, and also where you can actually die. So the same thing for us, if you get the bends because of the altitude and it coming down, 100% oxygen precludes that from happening. To stay hydrated on long flights and nourished, we took up plastic containers. I'm sure you've seen marathoners. They have a little plastic container and a little long tube, and I'll show you where we take the water. I always took up a container of water and one of Gatorade. So I had 2 different liquids for the flight, and also depending on how long the mission was. The food comes in a tube, like a toothpaste tube. I'll show you a picture of it, and you squeeze it through the same slot with a little device. There you go. There's the tube food. This one happens to be, I can't remember. This one was key lime pie. It says right there. Well, here's the feeding port. So it's got a seal lip over here to keep it fresh all the time. And then you screw this down and it pops the seal, and then you just squeeze it out, and out comes the key lime pie. And I'll show you when we get to the helmet where it comes in. When you're doing all that mission prep, and all these gentlemen are now our physiological support people, and they're taking care of the pressure suits. They have it all ready for you. You come out in your long john underwear, put your feet in, stand up. Once you stand up, they zip it all the way from your crotch up to the back of your neck. And then you go in for testing. Here you can see a gentleman that's putting a helmet on, and this is where all the heaviness is. This ring is very heavy. There's some small barrel bearings in here. I would say about 50 ball bearings, very, very loose. So you can move your head back and forth and the ball bearings would follow with you. Here's where you can see he doesn't have his gloves on yet, but that's where the cold air is going to be coming all through his suit up to his hands. It goes all the way down to your feet. Once you get suited up, they you in these overstuffed chairs, recline you back, and then these people at physiological support that maintain your suits, they go over every nuance of this whole suit, all the way from the helmet down to your feet. Make sure your stirrups are on. These are the stirrups that are going to hook onto your ejection seat. And if they find anything wrong, if your leakage is out of tolerance, then you have time to go and get in your backup suit. So every crew member, like I said before, we had two pressure suits, primary and a backup. Whoops. Once you get in there, there's the pilot navigator. They're just sitting there waiting for the time. They come in this van, or each at Milton Hall we had a van, and we had one at Okinawa, and at Beale we had about 6 of these vans. They have the overstuffed chairs bolted to the floor. Here's your oxygen. Each crew member had the oxygen hose going in, and they drive you out to the airplane. Meanwhile, while you've been doing all the suiting up and all this other stuff, backup crew, they've been out in the cockpit and they go through the entire checklist right up to the start engine checklist. So when you, as the primary, get in the cockpit, you pick up the right at the start engine checklist, all ready to go. And the reason for that is that allows the backup crew that go out there and do this pre-flight, if they find anything wrong, they can hold these gentlemen up a little bit, say, hey, you must get on your radio, and you just call back and say, hey, 10-minute delay. So they would delay them coming out because we have to do something to it. This is our alternate way to get out to the airplane. We often wondered what would happen if the vans had a flat tire and we went out there. We only had one at Milton Hall and one at Okinawa each. So this was supposed to be the alternate means of getting out. Once you get out there, you can see these are the old original. We called these the milk wagons. That was the original transportation. Outside, the crew chief gives you the signal. The cockpits are ready. The backup crew will come inside the van. They'll give you anything they found that might want to tell you about the airplane. It makes it flyable, but something is just a little off tilt. They will tell you about it, and you can talk it over. If you didn't like it, then they go hook up and get it fixed. It's about 1, 2, 3. It's about 10 steps to get up into the cockpit. Once you get up there, the canopies are open. These are the PSD pipe people who do our chutes. They make sure all the connections are off the side, and then you sit down in the seat. And what you do, you're taught to, like the back seat here, you can see it. I'm not sure how good, but that's his hand. We're taught to just put your hand out on the platform. They have 9 connections. They have to mate you to the seat, ejection seat, your oxygen, your primary, your comm cord, all these different connections. You cannot get you can't bend down to see them. So these men and women, we had women to this job as well, they get to make up all those 9 connections that mate you to the seat. Basically, your life was in their hands when they got done here. I mean, if they forgot to do a parachute hookup or one of your feet retractors or a comm cord or an oxygen cord, you could be in big trouble. When they get done, they read a checklist. One gentleman will read the checklist, and the other gentleman up there, he will then pull and tug on each of the items he calls off to make sure it's secure. And all these 9 connections, they always had a clip over them so they couldn't come loose or vibrate loose. Here's the gentleman in the cockpit ready to go. Here's the helmet. Now he doesn't have a faceplate down. The faceplate is up here. Right now, he's just breathing ambient air like you and I are right now. This is the microphone cord. Now the next picture, you're going to see the glass down. There you go. This gentleman now has it's locked, and he is now inside. This is the glass. It's a very highly polished piece of glass. This little piece of glass in here, you can't even see it. It's got a gold wire, 3 strands going across, 1, 2, and then 1 down below. And it's a heating element because when you get up in the cockpit and you get up in the cold air and your hot breath it'll steam up in here. So we have a wire heat up, and we have a knob, which is down on my right-hand side on the console. I just put it in number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or how hot I want. And it'll get rid of any moisture inside the faceplate. This is the seal. That rubber seal goes all around down your chin. That's where you breathe 100% oxygen. It doesn't go anywhere else to the pressure suit. Now, this little opening right here is where we push our tube food and our water. It's an iris. You can't see, but it's an iris, and you just push it, and it'll open, and then it goes right to your mouth right here. So you have to turn your head a little bit, and you can take your water and your tube food. This is the starting card for the SR71. Oil for the airplane is very, very thick on the ground. Once you get it hot, it's going to get very hot at high altitude. So it's a special oil. When they came out and fill up the engine with a quart of oil or a gallon of oil, they had to preheat the container so it would flow because it's a solid. But being a solid, there's no way you could start the SR with air. Most jet engines, like airliners, they use a Palouse unit with air, and it gets the airplane or the engine rotating, and then you induce the ignition and the spark, and away it goes by itself. Well, that wouldn't work here. They tried all kinds of air, and they just couldn't get a volume of air to rotate it. So they made these Buick units. That's a mechanical shaft right there, and it's going to connect right to the bottom, right to the engine bottom as a spline, and it'll connect up. When the crew chief tells his assistants to pull the throttle, they'll take the throttle to full speed, and this thing just cranks up with a correct mechanical shaft. Now, here's what's inside the Buick. It's beautiful. It's great. 2 Buick Wildcat engines that put out with a total horsepower of 1,060 horses. And there's no spark, there's no mufflers on it. It has straight plugs. And when they crank this thing up at night, I'll tell you what, it's a beautiful sight to see. The 16 V8, we'd have 16 sparks, not sparks, but flames coming out each one of the exhaust ports at night. The noise was tremendous. I mean, it roared. When they pulled the throttle, it really roared. And you're in that hangar, which is very small. The echoing in there it made it sound really nice. The ignition system, most jet engines, airlines and otherwise, they used hot spark plugs called igniter plugs, basically. And they tried it with the fuel in the airplane. The fuel is JP7. It's a very unique fuel. No other jet engine uses it. It has a very high flash point. You could I saw crew chiefs throw cigarettes, matches, everything into a can of JP7. It will not ignite. It douses everything out. And the reason for that high flash point, as you'll see here, is the temperatures the fuel's going to get. The fuel internal to the airplane is going to get up to about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So the fuel had to be developed with a very high flash point. That's why it was called JP7. The starting uniqueness was called a liquid chemical. It's called triethylborane, TEB. We called it TEB for short. So this triethylborane, if I had it right here today in a squirt gun, a sealed squirt gun in my room, sealed, and I squeezed it out like a squirt gun into the atmosphere, guess what it does? It explodes in contact with the atmosphere, and that's what happens. That's how you light off the engine with a triethylborane. It goes kaboom, and that in turn lights off the JP7. You had 16 shots for starting the engine, and it's going to take 1 shot to start the engine, and then every time you go into afterburner, it takes another shot. So we got 16 shots. That's 8 for each engine. And this picture captures all that. Here we are in one of our hangars. You can see all the JP7 on the floor. It doesn't really matter. You can throw a cigarette in there. You can throw a light in there, and you're not going to light it off. Here's a Buick start card over here, and look what they're going over. They're starting this one right now. This is the spline that goes directly up into a mechanical shaft right onto the bottom of the engine. Someone who took this picture, that is the liquid exploding right inside there in the engine. And that's what it does. That's how you start it off. Very, very unique having a liquid chemical ignition system. And getting ready for the takeoff here. The crew chiefs, once you're all set, gone through all your checklists, taxi on out. We always followed the mobile crew. The mobile crew, which is, again, the backup crew, they lead you out there about 100 yards or so in front of you, And they're doing little S-turns down that taxiway, and then eventually they'll go all the way down the runway for 8,000 feet down the runway. What they're looking for is anything on that taxiway or runway that could cut these tires. You remember what happened to the Concorde taking off out of France? He caught something on the takeoff, blew the tire, fire, and everything was a disaster after that. We lost an SR71 for the same way back in 1967, 68, taken off out of Beale, blew a tire, shards go up into the fuel, and we had a fire going down the runway. It all got out okay. That was the end of that airplane. After that, he said, we're going to have a car with a backup crew leading the airplane out all the way, and his whole job is to look for anything that cut the tires. Each one of these tires, what do you put in your car? You go in and fill up your car with, what do you put, 35% PSI, maybe 32, 37 at the highest. Each one of these tires, the nose and the main, 400 PSI gaseous nitrogen. And they use nitrogen for the obvious reason, maybe not obvious. In case a tire does explode, it's not air, it's nitrogen, which is an inert matter. So it would minimize and it would never catch on fire. Shouldn't. I shouldn't say never, but it shouldn't, because it's nitrogen. Now we're out for the run-up. These are the crew chiefs. You usually get a crew chief from each shop, the hydraulics, the electrics, the sensors, the cameras. They come out because if you have any problems out here, these are the guys who are going to get on a headset and they're going to give you some yes or no, whether you're going to be going or not going. Now, I have to exaggerate. This picture right here is a little bit more than really come out. Generally, about half this number come out. What happened on this is happened to be the pilot's last flight of the day for his whole tour. So when they do a last flight, everyone comes out for it. We do a run up. We stay in full military power for 30 seconds on each engine, and that's getting recorded. There's recorders on this airplane that record every 3 seconds, every parameter on that engine, everything you say, everything you talk. Your recorders are getting your voice. It's recording the cameras, the jammers, everything and all being recorded every 3 seconds. A little bit about our takeoff roll here. Just take a look at the data real quick. There's our gross weight of 120,000 pounds. Sea level, winds 10 degrees knots of wind. Don't worry about these. It's 86 degrees outside. We're going to rotate the nose at 180 knots. We'll start bringing the nose off the ground, and we're going to lift off the ground from 180, raise the nose to 210 is where we want to break ground at 210. Now, the real secret is 230. You want to get the gear up real quick because the nose gear is it's a forward moving nose gear, not backward. It moves forward up into the belly of the nose. So because of that, if you get too much airstream against it, it's not going to go up. You're going to have to go back, slow down, and then get it come up. So your goal was to get the nose gear up as fast as you could. Here's some numbers. If you have to come back right after takeoff, they assume you're going to go from 120,000 down to 116. You're going to dump 4,000 pounds of gas just doing a circuit. Look at your speed coming on final. That's in knots, not miles per hour, but that's in knots. Landing, it's basically 191 knots. Here we are 2 minutes before takeoff. That special guy went over to the intel place where he has got all the communications. The primary crew's here. The backup crew is in the car. They've already gone down the runway. So there's 2 minutes before takeoff. The tower officer's up in the tower. He tells no one else taxis and no one take off or land. It's all our runway. So exactly at 2 minutes before, you slide onto the runway. There he is turning. Massive rudders on the airplane. A lot of people say, wow, that's a lot of rudder authority. And you need that because look where the engines are. This is not a centerline airplane. If you lose an engine on takeoff, it gives a big yawing moment and it takes a lot of rudder authority to get this thing going straight. Here we are, just lining up. My backseater, the way Don and I worked it, he gave me a 5-second countdown. Remember, he has R2-D2 in the back, that accurate clock. He would go 5, 4, 3, and to hit 3, I started bringing the throttles up. By the time he hit 2 and he hit 1, I released the brakes and I'm not moving much. And by the time he said 1, I'm into afterburner and rolling down the runway. Simultaneously with this, knowing that I'm taking off right off on time, that gentleman who went with the map, the computer, and went to that secure location, he now starts a stopwatch. Can you read the speeds, or just they all being blocked out by this block here? Can you read the speeds there?
Yeah, we can see them.
Okay, because my screen sharing, I got this block down here below. Here we are lifting off. You can see gear coming up. You want to get that gear up as soon as you can. It's not trying to be a hot dog. Log thinks we're trying to be a hot dog, but you got to get that gear up before this airplane gets up to 230. Climb on out. There's your speeds for climbing. And 2 minutes later, you'll be leveling off 25,000, heading towards the tankers, which are already up here. Now, remember, I said the tankers will be up here. There'll be 3 of them. We always have 3 tankers in a cell. You have a primary tanker, you're going to take your half your load off. Second tanker, you're going to take your other half off. And the third tanker up there is just in case you can't refuel from either one of the other 2. So as we go up here subsonic, where'd my little mouse go? There it is. We just go up here subsonic, and they've already been up there. They're required to be on station 30 minutes before our arrival. They have the drift corrected, and they're in a left-hand orbit. I should say orbit, not a round orbit. They're in a racetrack. They just wait, and what they're doing, we have a secure means of giving, of receiving a bearing pointer to the tankers and a DME to the tankers. Likewise, they also have the same equipment and it's secured from anyone jamming it. They have a pointer to me in my airplane and a DME, a distance to me. So we know a distance to each other and we have a bearing pointer. That's how we do this racetrack accurately. And they always time it. So in that last leg, they're heading this way, and I just don't, and I'll catch them on their upward leg here. Here's a picture coming in on the tanker. Now there'll be 3 of them there. This will be, I'll take half my load off the primary, and I'll take another half off the secondary, and then the third tanker is up there just in case either one of the other 2 cannot offload. There's the pre-contact. Once I get in there, then the boomer starts flying it with the fins there. And I've opened up the receptacle and he plugs me in, and I have jaws on the SR. These massive jaws just lock it in. It'll stay locked until I push on the control stick, which I'm flying the airplane with. I have a trigger. If I pull the trigger, it will then release the jaws, but it won't do it until then. Here's a little piece of glass where I told highly polished quartz glass. R2-D2 is under this whole compartment right here, and R2-D2 is going to be looking up for the stars. It already has. Here's the back seater, and you can see me up. It's more up front. I think I got a picture. Yeah, that's what it looks like from inside the cockpit. That's what I'm seeing and looking up at the body of the fuselage of the tanker. After you fly it quite a while and you get used to it, you just fly a position. These are little director lights. They tell you to go up or down more. They're actually, once you plug in, it's automatic. And then this is up and down, and this is fore and aft. They never had a light for left and right because you can tell you're dead center or you're not dead center. But up and down and left and right, these would give you some clues which way to go. After you did this for a year or 2, you're getting the refueling. You really didn't. You just used them as a gouge. You just flew off the fuselage. So far, we haven't done any radio contacts whatsoever. We've got our gas. You can see, I can tell this thing's about ready. You can see that's fuel coming out of the top of the airplane. These are the fuel tanks. This is where it starts. It has 6 main fuel tanks. This is number 1, 2, 3, 4 moves out to the wings. 5 and 6 are all back to the tail. 80,000 pounds of gas. After you get your gas, you go ahead and close everything up. Say goodbye to the tankers with a wave. You don't talk. And you light the afterburners. And you start heading on the track. Here's a little bit about the engine. It's a Pratt & Whitney. It's a one-of-a-kind engine. No other airplane has the J58. It's built exclusively for the SR71. 34,000 pounds of thrust, so you have a total of two engines of 68,000 pounds of thrust. This is on a test cell at Beale Air Force Base, and we used to, anytime they were going to do a test, I'll tell you where the word got out on base, and you could take your kids down here and see this. It was a sight to behold. Eventually we had to rope it off because some kids were saying, "Oh, I double dare you to get closer than me," or something like that. So we had to have it all roped off, make sure there's no interactions. When they did this afterburner run, that is the afterburner section. It actually becomes translucent. You can actually see those rods right there. There's one, and you can see one at the bottom. Those are the nozzles that are going to be modulated when I move the throttles. You can see right through the metal while it's, like I say, on the test stand. Uses JP7 gas, the only airplane that uses JP7. This is what we call the inlet. And the inlet is what really makes the airplane go at Mach 3. The engine starts, these are the front bypass doors. These are called the aft bypass doors. The front of the engine, right at the compressor, this is all hollow right in through here, basically. The front of the engine would start right around in here. This spike is locked forward. That's how you see the airplane on the ground. Once you accelerate, it comes loose. It's locked in position. It becomes unlocked when you get to Mach 1.3, and I think 1.3 on the speed, and above, wow, and above 30,000. I think those are the two conditions. Once they've met those two conditions, and the spike now becomes it's on a hydraulic actuator, and it moves back 1/10 of an inch for each Mach number, each 1/10 of a Mach number after that. It moves back for a total travel of 25 inches. And you can see just by the dynamic shape of the scope of the spike, as it moves back, what you're going to have more area coming in because of the pointiness. So as you move this spike back, you don't move it, the computer moves it back, you get more area to suck up air. What this thing does basically, it's very complicated what happens inside here. There's a lot of stuff I can't even show. I could, but it's not classified. I just don't have any pictures for the interior. What happened, the analogy I give you, if I had a squirt gun, not a squirt gun, but a squirt hose right now, and I had no end on it, and I had you to turn the faucet tap on full bore with nothing on the end, it would go out, what, maybe 3 feet in front of you, maybe 4 feet, let's say. But if I told you to clamp your finger down on the top of that and spray it out, I can make that go out with a lot more velocity, and I can have it go more 20, 30 feet out in front of me by clamping it down and squeezing that water. Well, air is nothing more than another form of, just consider it like water. And that's what's happening inside there. That's how we get our Mach 3 speeds out of it. 1.7 to 2.3 on this climb out, we've got inlet guide vanes. That's the very first set of blades on the SR71, or actually the IGVs are the first on any airplane. Ours actually shift. They shift from an axial to cambered. The best analogy I could give you on this happening, if you had a stick shift car that had 5 gears, first, second, third, fourth, now you're going to put it in 5th gear, and that's ready to cruise. That's what's happening here. The IGV shift to an axial to a cambered, just like shifting into that next gear. This time, and then once all this happens and you get the axial to cambered, that engine, that J58, now becomes a turbo ramjet at this time. Once you get through 60,000 feet, we have a checklist. We turn everything off on that airplane that emits, every radio, HF, VHF, VOR, anything that can emit, anything that the bad guys could pick up is turned off on the airplane. And we have some other checklist items. This is real quick. This is our profile. If you could read this, during transition to supersonic cruise. This is all subsonic down here. This little shaded area, this is me doing my little dipsy doodle, we called it. Here we are coming off the tanker at about 20-some thousand feet. what we did for the Dipsy Doodle, we took the airplane and we climbed it up to about 32,000 feet on the way up. And then we put a full afterburner downhill. It turns out you actually save more fuel going subsonic up, and then as soon as you start pointing it downwards, you go to full AB, and then you get to the best fuel economy, getting to the rather than just going to straight. You can actually, light the afterburners and go Mach 1, 2, 3 on straight. But the most fuel saving is to do this Dipsy Doodle. Out here, you'd hit supersonic, and then from then on, you just let it climb on up. You hold 450 knot keys, knots equivalent airspeed. You hold 450 knots all the way up, and I'll guarantee you, when you get up to 70,000 feet and you level off, you will be at Mach 3. It's just a fact of life. So 70,000 feet, 450 knots keys, knots equivalent airspeed, and you will be at Mach 3. And that's where you're at right here. So that's our climb profile. That's where you leveling off right around 70,000 feet, 71, 72, somewhere in there. What you see about our turn radius. Remember I talked about the mission planners had a lot of latitude because once you get above 60, it's all their airspace. This is a bank angle chart versus turn radius. So here's the chart at the top. That's a Mach 3 airplane. It goes up to 3.25 here, all the way down to 2.8. So we're going to be at 3.0. And I'm going to make a 35-degree bank turn. Look at my radius of turn, 63 nautical miles. I'd do a 180-degree turn, just double that. It'd be about 120 some miles is my 180-degree turn radius. And I took a check of this thing just to get an idea how far that would be here in Texas. If I'm flying an SR at Mach 3, and I come right over Dallas, and I make a right-hand turn for a 180-degree turn, I roll out right over the, what's the big Army base down south here? It escapes me right now. It's like 126 miles down south of Dallas. And that's why the mission planners need a lot of latitude in making their mission plans. Here's the temperatures the airplanes are going to get up to. This comes right out of the flight manual. I'm not making this up. You can see all the points. These are all in Fahrenheit. This isn't centigrade. This is Fahrenheit. Most of them are in the 400 to 500 degree temperature all around the airplane. I want you to note this number right here. 622 degrees Fahrenheit. That points right to my triangular piece of glass in the front cockpit. I used to put my hand out there just to see, man, I want to see how hot this really is. I couldn't keep my hand up there, but probably about 10 seconds with my pressure suit on, cooling air going through it, and I had to take my hand down. It was so darn hot up there. Well, I found a use for that. When I would take up my macaroni and cheese in that tube, instead of taking the cold down, if I took my tube and I squeeze it against that window on the inside, and I give it a minute and a half on two sides, and then I would squeeze that tube, nominalize it, it went down warm rather than cold. So I used that temperature as my in-flight oven. When Kelly Johnson built the airplane, he was thinking way out of the with the graphite. This is to reduce the radar section. Inside this graphite, and you can't see it, I know about it, is massive amounts of fiberglass. You know, fiberglass is nasty today. I don't think anyone even uses it anywhere. All this black graphite underneath it was all fiberglass. That's reducing the radar cross section for the bad guys trying to find you. Each rudder is made out of graphite as well. So the rudders, if you went into a turn, you wouldn't get any reflection off of the rudders. There's the cockpit. Oh, here, just before I forget, that's where I put my tube food. That's the window. This is the simulator, so that's why it looks frosted. But it'd be a real window up there, a glass window. And that's where I would shove my tube, a minute and a half on each side. Here's all your engine instruments down here. This is all your fuel equipment down here. attitude indicator. There's the stick. Here's our map reader, this little opaque glass. Would have your old 35 millimeter would be on a roll that the mission planners, many hours before, part of the maintenance people, they would load this up with the film in there, and that's how you follow along on your whole flight with this film. These are called bat wings. We have bat wings on both left and on the right. The sun is so brilliant at 80,000 feet. When you go into a turn, if that turn and that sun comes through that cockpit, you can't read an instrument whatsoever. So we used the bat wings to go ahead and block out the sun as we went into a turn, or if the sun was coming in, directly for a long time, we just block it out because you can't see any instruments whatsoever. I'm not going to get into that. This is the back seaters. Notice no flight controls at all. That's why we both take a physical before each flight. If I conk out up front, he is out of luck in the back as far as flying the airplane. Now his best bet, while I wasn't in the climb or in the descent, his best bet, I was on cruise portion and I had the autopilot on. He could then take R2-D2 over here and he can tell it to, okay, could program, take me back to Mildenhall, take me back to Okinawa, take me back to Beale. So he could direct it and hoping the airplane was still going to stay in one piece and still keep flying. Now, if he bailed out on me, if he got the big heart attack up here, I have nothing up in the front to work the ANS. I'm coming home, and hopefully it's pretty well straightforward on how I get back. But I have no tracking method on the Astro Tracker. This happened to be these little containers here. These are shades. He can put them up. They have Velcro. It gets quite bright at 80,000 feet, and it blocks out all the sunlight coming into his compartment. Just a few things to think about it. Once you get above 60,000 feet, anywhere in this globe, just like I said before, with the mission planners, you own all the airspace. There's nothing else up there. Generally, we kept the throttles, they're always in AB. We always fly and cruise in AB. Max range, cruise, you were going about 20,000, 21,000 pounds per hour per engine. So you're burning about 40,000 pounds per hour. There's a climb, I talked about it on a descent, and fuel flows are about 21,000 pounds per hour per engine. We had to stay on the black line that's on the map. All your sensors and cameras and everything is programmed on you being on that black line. You get off the black line, then they're not going to get the targets. This is where you don't try to hand fly it, and most people don't hand fly it. Once they level off at 70,000 feet, you're on the autopilot. We have little pitch wheel rolls, so I have a little on my right-hand side. I have a little wheel I can make the airplane go up and down, and I've got another wheel that goes left to right, and I can roll the airplane left and right. But normally, R2-D2 is doing all the rolling. The only thing I have to fly, basically, on the airplane is the throttles. I have my hands on the throttles, and I have my hand and my little pinky finger on the pitch wheel if I want to go up or go down. But once you get it set, it'll pretty much stay there. You may have to make little changes after that. Navigation, like I said, R2-D2, the ANS, it does an accurate, very, very accurate. Hot temperatures, the hotter it gets up there, the more critical you're going to be using more fuel, and that really cuts into you. If we had hotter than standard day temperatures at 70, 75, 80,000 feet, if it was hotter than normal, it would really eat into your fuel. And that's what we've sort of monitored all the time, because it does change. Everyone thinks it's a constant temperature up there. It doesn't, not even from day to day. It will change dramatically from season to season. And from location to location, like Mildenhall versus Okinawa versus Beale, it changes in each one of them. But each one, it doesn't change that often. 20 minutes of cruising, the whole airplane is up to those temperatures you saw on that graph. Just a few things to think about. It's just the two of you. There's no one else. When I was flying F4s in Vietnam, I had wingmen, I had other people, other assets up there. I could see other airplanes, strike force, all kinds of stuff. Here, no one knows where you're going other than those who are cleared for the SR program. And it's just the two of you. No help, no whatsoever. I used to think that, if I got down to Vietnam, the one good thing, and not much, but the one good thing I'd say about Vietnam and flying in combat there, if you went down, the whole air war stopped in all of Vietnam, and the whole focus was to get the guys out of the ground and get them back safely. That's the only good thing I thought about it. Okay, strap tightly in ejection seat. Can't move. You're as tight as you were before, and you don't loosen anything up because you don't know when you have to get out. Now, you would think it'd be very noisy with that afterburner going on in the back, but this is exactly how noisy it is in the cockpit and being inside the pressure suit. Dead silence. It's unbelievable. You sometimes have to just sort of pinch yourself that you're even moving, let alone going up 2,000 miles an hour. No one to talk with. There's no rescue system. There's no one to come and get you. You are all on your own. All the radios have been turned off and no one to talk with. And you're going to some bad places of the world. There's some that are worse than others, obviously. If you ever had to eject, I know on this particular mission up to Murmansk, if I had to eject down that Barents Sea, there's no way I was going to survive. You can have all the nice little life rafts and everything you got, being in a pressure suit, you're not going to last for very long. I remember when the Russians lost a nuclear sub. What was the name of that sub? I forget it right now. Anyhow, it went down many, many years ago. I'll say 15, 20 years ago. And it went down up there and the Barents Sea. I just knew they were never going to get out. I just about cried because I knew they were going to die. No help. And that's what we had in Vietnam and other places. You're on your own. And the bad guys might just be waiting. You just never know. It could be what I will say 80%, maybe 85% of our missions were what I call ho-hum. They didn't even know we were there. No reactions, no MiGs, no SAMs. But the other 15%, it might be all hell's coming loose. And just to show you where we're going, just another map. Here we are. We're after we've got our fuel level off about Mach 3 right in here. And we'll this part out of international waters, which is way not very far out. It's international waters, but high enough you can get a lot of pictures way inside. Murmansk is right here. We image it off to the left. Off to the right. Get into the Barents Sea, 180-degree turn, and come back and image it off to the left. After you do the imaging, we come back down, start descending down into Norway off the coast, and get another load of gas, and maybe do a Barents Sea or go a Germany Sea, or go back to Mildenhall. It could have been what we call a 3-loop, 2-loop, or 1-loop, or come on home. This area up here in the Barents Sea is it's really nasty. There's nothing but ice floes in the summer. Ice floes everywhere up here. Entering the sensitive area, we went through a checklist. The sensitive area was getting closer to the bad guys. It was a defined area, and we'd start making sure, I had to make sure Don had all the sensors up and running 100%. If they weren't there, particularly the ANS or Astro Tracker, we would turn around, come back, and abort. You had to have the autopilot on. If you try to hand fly the airplane, you're gonna make the airplane move too much to get good imagery. So we had to have the autopilot on to get good imagery. Quiet, stay focused. We don't talk to each other like we do normally. We'll talk about ball games or where we're going to go and, how's things going at home and everything like. You stay focused, very, very focused on the mission. Crew coordination important. That's why we don't change crews. For the 8 years I flew the SR71, 75, 5, 6, 7. 7 years I flew the SR. I flew with Don Emmons. He's the only person I flew operational missions with. By the same token, I'm the only pilot he flew with for those 7 years. We never, ever mix and match crews. If one gets sick, then you get a whole new crew in. That's why you have the backup crew. Attention, and you do get an increased sense of awareness. When you start getting around the bad guys, you sort of get the cackles on the back of your neck and everything. You start getting a very deep sense of awareness of what's around you. And you're looking for SAMs. Me visually, he's got electronic indication of SAMs being fired. If radar's trying to track us, the backseater has a wealth of the top of the latest and greatest sensors in the back to do it. Remember, what we're doing, we're carrying sensors up there that are recording everything they do, everything they say, and any frequencies. If they try to lock onto us with the SA2s or SA5s or MiG-25s, try to lock onto us, we're recording all of their signatures. And what we do, we have the state-of-the-art jammers that take care of those. So we're always having the best jammers for their electronics. Once it's all done, start going back home or go to another part of the world, do another loop somewhere else. It's a picture 70,000 feet, and I know it's 70 because that's a U2. Now you can see a curvature up here. Whoops, little curvature up here. That's looking out one window. You take that all the way around and go around all the way to the back of it. That's a very definitive curvature. There's another U2 picture. That's Lake Tahoe underneath the wing. And again, a little bit of curvature. That's another shot from a U2. And again, you have to think that that's just out one window. Here's some of our imagery. This is done with one of our cameras. It gets down to about 4-inch resolution. That's a solar array in Southern California. I just show the picture because it shows the clarity of taking a picture at 80,000 feet. I mean, this is unbelievable and very good. Always state-of-the-art cameras, always being updated, improved all the time. I have no idea what airfield that is, but that gives you a good idea of what you get at 80,000 feet. You can see some clouds down there below, and I don't know where it's at. I have no idea. That I do know what it is. It happens to be Palmdale. I can see an SR71 here, and there are some others down here. There's SRs on it. This is where they did a major overhaul for the SRs, where they take it all apart and put it all back together and upgrade it. We did it, I think every airplane did it on a time schedule. I don't think it's not a calendar schedule, it's a time schedule. Now we're ready to come down and slow it down, come down. That's what the whole descent is, coming down and slowing down, all the way down. 80,000 down to Mark III. Takes about 230 miles of ground to get down. 15 minutes to come down. If you're ever, I'll get into that later. It's a 365 knot basic constant airspeed descent, 365 knots. Critical maneuver. You have to really pay attention to those inlets. Now remember that spike is now coming back out, where before on the way up it goes in. So now it's coming back out, and it's very critical. If you don't maintain the right RPMs and EGTs on the engines on the way down, this is the one time you can flame out the engines real easy. So you had to really pay attention. We've had a few guys flame out one engine. We've had a couple guys who have had the only glider time in the SR71 and eventually got it restarted. But they actually flamed out both engines on the way down. Level off 2,000 feet below the refueling altitude. If you're going to refuel, let's say 23,000, you get down to 21,000. And would meet the tanker again, 40 miles out. We use that bearing and bearing pointer and DME to each other to do the rendezvous. And if you're coming home, you just come on back down. We were allowed to do electronic rendezvous with the tankers down to 1 mile visibility. And I will tell you, there's a couple of times when you set little DME down at 1 mile and you don't see him. And you know he's right out there. All you have to do is just get maybe another 1/10 of a mile and you might see him. You take a little bit of a gutsy chance, but you will pull in a little bit further. Now, I will say I will separate myself vertically from them. If I'm going to move inside of 1 mile, I will then vertically separate myself and then climb in, go in slowly. Here's a descent profile real quick. Here you are at 77,000 feet roughly. Mach 3, 3.1, 3.2. This shows your whole descent profile coming on down. That's where you basically level off, or if you're going to go for another tanker, or if you're coming all the way down to home plate, that's where you come there. And these are some of the checklist items you got to come on the way down. You can see you're at Mach 3. At this point, you should be at Mach 2.5, Mach 2 here, 1.7 here, 1.3, 1.0, and then subsonic. So it's just a schedule you fly down. But like I say, very critical of you maintaining RPMs on the way down, or she will flame out on you. 30 minutes before landing, everything starts coming in reverse. Power. You might have been gone. We've been gone sometimes on long missions, particularly over Okinawa, not Mildenhall, because the other places are too close. But there's some places over Mildenhall or Okinawa where you're so far away, you could go over to the officers club and have lunch because there's no way he could ever get back in time. So you know this whole schedule of when you're going to be called upon. So the tower operator, he goes up the tower and he starts telling the people what's happening. Back up the mobile crew, they go in and get the det commander. There's always a reason, I don't know why, but every det commander of each of the detachments at Mildenhall and Okinawa, they always wanted to be there for the recovery. So the mobile crew would go in and pick them up and then head out to the runway. Maintenance folks, they would come out with their vehicle. They have a vehicle that has stairways to it. So if we have to want to but get out of the cockpit real quick, we can get out with its little stairways. There they are, just waiting for the runway, by the runway on a taxiway for the SR to come in. This obviously is over Mildenhall. This is over Okinawa because all around it's water. There's the speeds on final. When you pop that drag chute, it really deaccelerates the airplane. Does a great job. There's actually 3 chutes come out. The first chute is called a pilot chute. The second chute is called an aerodynamic chute. And then they aren't connected. They drop on the runway. And this one is your main chute. So you have a pilot chute, and it brings out the aerodynamic, and the aerodynamic then brings out the main chute. Really good tug. And then we just jettison on the runway maintenance. The tower officer tells them that the runway is closed. And until we get the chutes off, no one can land. And then the maintenance guys go out and pick up the chutes. Taxi back in without the chute. He's getting ready to jettison it right now. Taxi back in. And when you get out of the cockpit, the PSD people are there to grab your helmets and all that. Those 2 guys, they shaking hands with each other for a long mission. Then at the foot of the ladder, real quick, you just do a real maybe 10, 15-minute debriefing. The intel officer will be there, the crew chief and the maintenance officer, he'll be there, and the ops officer will be there. So you have all disciplines there. And if you had anything weird to say and talk about and say, hey, we got to talk about something here later on, you tell them at this time. No, everything being normal, just get hopefully they got some water for you or maybe a beer waiting for you, and which goes down real good. There's a good crew right there meeting you. I'll tell you what, after sucking on 100% oxygen for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, that beer goes down really quick. That's a young me this is out of Okinawa. That's the guy I flew with for 7 years, Don Emmons. These 2, it's BC, and that's I forget his name. And these were the 2 mobiles. We had 2 airplanes up at the same time over there. It's something we wanted to try. What they wanted to do, it's a very unique mission. We only did it twice. We had 2 SR71s going off the coast of China, out of harm's way, and we had them going pointed at each other, so you have a Mach 6 closure. Meanwhile, an airplane called an RC-135 is out over the Pacific Ocean, out of harm's way, and they have a tremendous recording capability, and they're recording everything that's happening to the Chinese. They see the airplanes. Do they see both airplanes? Are they scrambling? Are they going to try to chase them? They record everything they can think of, and that's what we do. We basically stimulate the environment for the RC-135 so they can get a lot of good intel. Post-mission activity, intel debrief. If nothing happened, no brainer, no one came up, that would last maybe 20 minutes at the most. Operations brief. This is where we got everyone back in, and this is a no holds bar. How did we screw it up on the taxi? How do we screw up radio calls? Why wasn't the tower officer? We talk it and you tell it like it is, and we make it better each time and try to make it a smoother and smoother operation. And it was, like I say, no holds barred in the ops debrief. That's the only way you're going to make it better. Maintenance debrief. Now, the hardest part about this, you have to remember, these men and women have to find out what is wrong that you're about to write up in the airplane. And you only got 2 of them over at Mildenhall, and you got 3 at Okinawa. They don't have a lot of time to get these things fixed. So you stay there as long as necessary. That was our rule. If you had no write-ups whatsoever, no write-ups on the airplane, just put in the replenishable, the fuel, the oil, the TEB, replenish all that, and you're ready to go. We would stay there for about 45 minutes just talking over normal stuff. If we had something wrong with the airplane, we were obligated to stay there as long as they needed us there, because what they're going to do is get the tapes. The tapes record everything on that airplane every 3 seconds. The fuel pressure, the tire pressure, the inlet pressure, the liquid nitrogen, all these parameters are being recorded every 3 seconds. And then we can tell them when it happened pretty close. And they can go down the tapes and they can find out, here it is. And we can see it happening on there. And they get it. They can do a better analysis of what went wrong by us staying there and telling them what we felt in the cockpit, as opposed to them just seeing the digits. So I've been at maintenance debrief. I've been there for 2.5 hours for one of those kind of missions where something happened while it was hot and we had to really sit there and talk about it. There's our favorite place over at Mildenhall. That was called the Smokehouse Inn. It's not there anymore. With a couple of crew members, that's where you go after that. After being on that oxygen so long, those go down so quick. I'd be very remiss if I didn't talk about the men and women. I'll tell you, I think you get a good view that this airplane could bite you real quick. And these men and women stay all through the day, all through the night, make this a safe airplane to fly at Mach 3 and all environments. And I can't say enough graciousness about them. I mean, they do a yeoman's work to make this thing safe for us to fly. When I pull into the hangar and I shut the engines down in the hangar, because that's how we do, you taxi right into the hangar, shut the engines down, I'm done. My job's over with. Now, these Intel folks, these men and women, they now have to download all those sensors off the sides of the airplane, get them in, and get them into their into the units where they actually can debrief all this the Intel, look over all the pictures, and get it out in a timely fashion. Back in those days, the rule was if you aren't timely on your intelligence, you're going to be history and real quick. And a lot of airplanes lost their prestige because they weren't responsive to the national authorities. And our guys stayed up all through the night to get this stuff out immediately as fast as they could. Of course, now today they're all doing it with sat. I mean, it's real time now. That's why I'm talking about a long time ago. I can't say enough good things about the tankers either. I'll tell you what, we've never ever, that I know of, had a missed air refueling because the tankers were not there on time and giving us the gas. I know of a couple missions where we've had the SR71 in bad guy territory screaming bloody Mary that I'm low on gas, I can't make it, can you come and get me? And these tankers have gone out of harm's way, into harm's way, and saved a couple SR71s. So my hat goes off to them. And they've got some good awards and decks for doing that as well. Here's the big record we set. This is back in 1974. This is when Farnborough was, it still is today. It's one of the biggest air displays. Here's the refuel. I'm going to show you the flight over. Start over here at Beale. Off out of Beale, refueled around Mountain Home, subsonic across the U.S., refueled down here in the South Carolina area. They went up to Mach 3. Now here they go up to Mach 3, and they have a timing gate. This is where the official timing gate is, with a high-tech telescope looking directly perpendicular up. It starts the time out over the North Atlantic, and the SR had to refuel, come down, refuel, take on a load of gas, and all the way into Farnborough for the air show. New York to London, 1 hour and 55 minutes. That's a record that's never been beat. And when you think he has to slow down to subsonic and then get his gas and go from subsonic all the way back up to like that dipsy doodle I told you, and all the way back in, that's 1 hour and 55 minutes. Once they put it on display at the Farnborough Air Show for the 7 or 8 days, they said, let's set a record coming back. And I make it sound simple. They just didn't say it. They know they were going to do it. They ferried it up to Mildenhall, prepped the airplane. It took off, and the timing starts. Right here, you can see the refueling off of Ireland all the way to the Canada, a refueling here, and that then went all the way into Los Angeles. That was a record of 3 hours and 47 minutes. So that's 1 refueling and 2 refuelings all the way to Los Angeles, back up to Beale. These 2 records have never been broken. All the retirements, 1990, they all retired. Congress and people in lobbying for money for their pet projects. They just thought this airplane, and it was, I mean, this is when we were starting to get into more real-time stuff, and we were never, ever real-time. And the more you can get into real-time intelligence, the people are going to love it. Retired in 1990. They realized that there are some places around the globe that may have a hot spot where we need to go and inspect and get the intelligence back to the president. So they reactivated in 95. They only brought back 3 planes and only 3 crews. It was a very, very small operation. They started it up down at Palmdale, California. Beale was never more in the picture after 1990. Unfortunately, nothing happened for the next 2 years. And then he just flew for those 2 years, training sorties, getting ready in case anything happened. So in 97, the Congress said, no more money, you guys there's nothing going on, so we're going to cancel your program in 97. And that was it. That was the last time. However, those of us who flew it believe. Now, I can guarantee you Elvis has never had a flight in the airplane. We've taken up a lot of DVs, congressmen, senators, ever who had the horsepower. We've taken them up in our trainer aircraft and put them in the front seat while you sit in the back as an instructor to give them a flight. There's Kelly Johnson getting his Mach 1 flight. I can't believe this. As much as Kelly came up to Beale, this guy could have, he's the one who built the plane. He could have got a flight at a Mach 3 anytime, all the time, but he never asked for it. What he did, this is a A12. This is the prototype. The A12 trainer didn't have the J58 engines, and it couldn't go any faster than 1.7 Mach. So Kelly got a ride in the airplane up to 1.7 Mach. And I don't know why he didn't come up and get a Mach 3 flight, because he could have easily do it. Anyone would be proud to give him one. I'm not going to do this movie. Here's a quick summary of the sorties from 22 years. Total sorties, over 17,000. There's the hours flown for those 22 years. There's how many hours are at Mach 3 plus. And 86 pilots and 86 navigators. Now, I put those, there's a lot of people who have had a ride in the airplane. And there's a lot of people who tested the airplane for Lockheed. The only ones I could quantify, and is 86 pilots and 86 navigators flew the operational missions of the SR71. Something on the books, I think eventually, once they get some, things going faster, obviously, and safer, or they'll come up with an SR72 eventually, someday. Just quickly, I get a little plug in here. Those are the 6 books I've written on the SR71. You can get any one of these on eBay. If you do it on eBay, you got to make sure if you want me, it's got to say the seller's information has to say SR71 pilot 1974 to 1981. That is specifically me selling my books, and I can autograph them to you wherever you tell me to, or for whatever you want, birthdays or whatever. But if you buy them somewhere else, it's not me. Yeah, and if you are going to get it for somebody, please tell me who to autograph it to, because that's the one thing most people don't do. They just buy it and I just sign it. Okay, I'm ready for questions if I put you to sleep. Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you have time for questions or just want to?
Yeah, we have plenty of time for questions.
Okay.
So whoever wants to speak up.
Rich, I got a question. Dave speaking here.
Go ahead.
You're talking about communications, and I'm highly interested in communications. And matter of fact, I'm ex-Air Force, ex-radio communication analyst. 202XO is my AFSC. I was wondering, I know the A12s had a system called Birdwatcher.
That's it.
Did the SR71s carry the Birdwatcher?
No, what we had basically for long range, we had a HF set. The navigator in the back, I didn't stay on hot mic very much, but the back seater at a routine time, he would give out a coded HF message, and that gentleman, I said, it goes over that secure location. He then picks up the message, and we know he puts out a coded message that we're all code 1 now. No problems, no, we're pressing on kind of thing. So he gave updates with the HF radio, all coded.
As I understand it, it was on HF, and it was a series of tones, and each series of tones meant a different parameter of all the systems on the bird.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about, the bird thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that we didn't have that.
Oh, very good, very good. Also, did you have any contact with the civilian CIA pilots that flew the SRs?
Oh yes, yeah, we stayed. They came to all over you. Even while we were flying the airplane, they all showed up to reunions and all that. And I know them all.
And I read a story about Jack Weeks, a CIA pilot.
Yep.
And he was lost in an A12, I think in '68.
He was.
I read, and I don't know if I should bring this up or not, but I read somewhere that there was even rumors after he was lost that he possibly defected with the bird, but that was shot down quite simple. Now, is there any credence to that rumor, or? Not that I know of. You're the first one to mention that one. Yeah, I read it a couple places, but I didn't.
Well, Jack Weeks is the one. You know what happened, don't you?
I guess he took the bird up for an FCF after a maintenance on one of the engines, and and it went kapooey on him, I guess. Yep, and we had the system called the Birdwatcher, and the Birdwatcher was sending signals to Okinawa all the time, and he was over north of the Philippines, and the airplane basically it just came unglued. And never found a stitch of either him or the craft. Nope, never did. No little pieces or bits or anything. Very good. Very good. Thank you. I really enjoyed your speech, and it brought some memories with in relationship to Intel. Good. Most of mine was Comet and a little ELET too, but most Comet. Yeah. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Richard, this is Al here. I have a question about the inlet guide vanes. You mentioned that at some point they go from axial to cambered configuration. Just really, what does that mean? Yeah, it just makes one movement. There's an engine down here at the Frontiers of Flight Museum. We have the world's one and only simulators out here, right here in Dallas. It doesn't move, doesn't hum, doesn't light up, but it's the original simulator. Am I still on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're there.
I've got a quick question for you.
Wait. The question was what again?
Inlet guide vanes going from axial to cambered configuration. It's on the very first stage, the very front stage. And you can see on it, they're beveled. It has a 2 position, and the IGV's made a shift at a certain EGT. There's a thermocouple right there. When it registered the right EGT, and don't ask me what the number is, the IGVs would shift. And you could actually feel it in the car. It's like taking your stick shift and going into another gear. And what it did, it cambered the IGVs to another better position because of the speed and the amount of air that's going through it.
Oh, I get it. Okay, thank you.
Question about the C-135s doing the refueling. Where were they able to go? You dictated where you wanted to be refueled at, but they had to go get that JP7 from someplace. Was that readily available at Air Force bases?
Well, yeah, we had all JP7. We had huge tanks over at Okinawa, and we had this huge tanks over at Mildenhall, both places, filled up with JP7.
But so the only place the 135s could refuel then was at Mildenhall or Guam.
That's the only place they flew out of. You know, if I flew a mission out of Mildenhall and I'm going all the way down to, let's say, Cyprus, or we're going down to, what's the guy that went crazy in the Mediterranean there?
Gaddafi.
He went bonkers for a while. We had a little air war with him. Anyhow,
Gaddafi.
the fuel, the tankers have the JP7, and we burn, so they're like our airline, you know, this refueling in the air, it's all JP7. Wherever we go, it's JP7.
I guess my concern is that if you're going a long range, you can't be at Mach 3 because of what, an hour and a half is about the most you can stay at that fuel burn without getting real serious.
You'll be you with a full load of gas, 80,000 pounds of gas. When you come off the tanker, level off and come down. Forget the level off or the going up or going down. You're good for about 1 hour of Mach 3 cruising. Then you got to be coming down.
Okay, what was your best, if you had to go 2,000 miles to your hotspot, would you cruise at Mach 3 then also, or was there a more economical?
You always, the SR is not efficient at subsonic. If Mach 3 is the only efficient number we had. That's the best range all the time is Mach 3.
Okay, you had to have tankers ready and waiting then.
Well, yeah, we had like if you go down to Mildenhall, you would, if I'm going to go into the Mediterranean, I would refuel right off the coast of Land's End. That'd be my first refueling. That would get me up to full tanks. So I take off out of Mildenhall. I'd go subsonic across the country down to Land's End. I'd get my full load there. I'd then go ahead and climb supersonic, go around Portugal, come in through the Mediterranean, and get another load of gas in the Mediterranean. That would get me all the way around and back out. Then at Mediterranean on my exit, and then that would get me one more out over the Atlantic, and I go up to Mildenhall. It's all orchestrated pretty good. I mean, it's a nightmare to think about it, but everything's orchestrated.
It takes a lot of planning.
Yeah, a lot of planning. And that same tankers in the middle of the Mediterranean that you got to gas from going in, they're the same tankers on the way out.
Richard, Peter here. Did the Russians have anything that would come close to the SR71 in technology?
No, I had one of the stories I have out of Okinawa. We used to take off, I'd call it one of our routine, not all the time, but it wasn't that routine. But you take off out of Okinawa, head due north. We're going to go up to the Kamchatka.
Kamchatka.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Kamchatka.
Kamchatka Peninsula.
At the very end of that long island is a place called Petropavlovsk, and we called it Petro for short. And the Russians up there had a nuclear facility, and we would go up and image it. So you take off out of Okinawa, you get supersonic, come down, you refuel over the the eastern side of Japan. Then you go climb back up, and now you're cruising up towards Camp Chekma. And at the very southern end, we would image off to the left, Petropavlovsk, and then do a 180-degree turn and come on back, image it on the right-hand side. Well, I was going up there, it was a clear day, not a cloud in the sky. And we were getting close to, we'd already done a refueling off of Japan. I'm cruising along Mach 3, probably about 75, 76,000 feet. And I see this, out of all this blue, vast Pacific, I see a circle. And I get closer and closer, and I can tell that it's contrails. And all these contrails were in a circle. And as I got closer, I could actually see individual ones. There were 3 MiG-25s. This is what I turned out later from Intel. It was 3 MiG-25s up there. They're in trail with each other, and they're just waiting for me to get close enough, and then they're going to come out one at a time, 1, 2, 3, following each other by about 25 miles, and do a pop-up and see what they can do with me, or maybe get me off course. I don't know. So they came up, and I told Don in the back, I said, hey, Don, get your cameras ready. I got some MiGs coming here, and I think they're going to come straight at us. I pushed it up a wee little bit, and he got his cameras on. He has the ability in the back to take what we call happy snaps. He could take a picture. That's by pushing a button, it would take a little camera. So he had a view sight, and he'd take push a button, he get a picture of what's either done. And they use that a lot for fixing where the SR71 is, directly beneath the airplane, for accuracy. So I said, here they come. And he says, okay, I'll get them on. I'll get some happy snaps here. So he got a picture of each one of these MiG-25s coming up after me. And I could tell they were coming up because that contrail they were putting out, as they came out of the trail and of the circle and started coming towards me, the contrail disappeared. So I knew they were coming up. They probably lit the afterburners, and they're coming up now, and they aren't in that atmosphere that's creating the contrail. And when you look at the pictures, we saw the pictures about a week later. And if you look at them, you can see these 3 separate pictures of these MiGs just falling out of the sky like this. It was funny to see them like that. I knew they couldn't get up there. They could try all they want. One thing you don't realize, one thing you need to realize is that no country that I know of builds air-to-air missiles just to shoot down an SR-71. And everyone knows those fins back in those days, not today, because today they're using thrust vectoring missiles. But back in those days, they had fins, just little fins. They're designed to be a missile at the thicker air up to about 25, 30,000 feet, maybe 40. But you take one of those up to 60, 70, 80,000 feet, those fins are going full deflection trying to turn it, and they just can't do it. They can't make the turn. There's no atmosphere up there.
Richard, Dave.
In fact, as a sidelight, you remember Victor Belenko? Does that name mean anything to you?
The defector?
Russian.
Victor Belenko was the gentleman. He was a Russian, and he took a MiG-25 and defected with it over to Japan. And we had our experts go over there, and we basically tore it all the way down to pieces and recorded everything it's capable, and then put it all back together. And then we gave it back. The Japanese gave it back to the Soviets. Now, when he did that, he was a defector all of a sudden. And when I go to Oshkosh, when I was going to Oshkosh routinely, I went for about 10, 15 years in a row. He would always be up there. And he and I made friends with him when I saw him giving a talk. And I talked about the SR-71. And ever since then, we were the best friends. And we would, every time at Oshkosh, we'd go up there and meet and go have a beer somewhere. It was funny. I'm surprised he's still alive, because, you know, the Russians don't forget anything. I never, whenever I was around him, I thought I was waiting for someone to shoot him or something, or give him a poison pill.
What were your landing minimums back at Mildenhall?
We're 201.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically the whole airplane was 201. Yeah. We had a lot of alternates. I mean, we were always poised for more gas, or if we're landing in the air, if we thought it was going to be marginal, we'll keep the tankers up longer in case we do a missed approach, so I can go get some more fuel and then go somewhere else, go up to Japan or go to Korea, somewhere.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
I enjoyed the, I don't know if I'm working here. Oh yeah, I enjoy your story about the MiG-25s off of Conchacta. I spent some time in a RC-135 while I was at Eielson and on Lordat Shimia, and had the joys of getting thumped 3 times, maybe 4 times. And the last time we got thumped was with a Yak-28, and it was a PP model. And they flew next to us trying to pick up signals from the RC, and we had to shut everything down, including the receivers, because anything electronic emits a signal, and they didn't want the Russians to pick up any signals from our receivers.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of well, we call them coordinated sorties. They're all with the RCs and ECs, and we'd go up into Barents, even up to Murmansk. We'd go up there, and they'd be out of harm's way, and we'd be, trying to stimulate the environment for them.
Yeah, well, yeah, stimulate the environment. That's a good description. When a lot of people think of military exercises, and they just think about a bunch of ground pounders running around with rifles and tanks running around. But a lot of those exercises are generated to generate chatter on the on your target's comm systems.
And that's how, then you learn their capabilities. That's like the mission I told you with the 2 SRs coming together in Mach 3. Sounds like a stupid maneuver. Who would want to do it? But it got their attention, and you start getting some capabilities or lack of the capabilities.
Yeah, anything unusual, they start chattering, and that's what we want to see.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was always impressed with all the ECs, RCs. Those guys are good. We used to go to the bar with them over at Mildenhall a lot.
I spent some time TDY in Chicksands in England also.
Ah, yeah, Chicksands. Anything else?
Yeah, on another note, how did you come out with all your weather down there?
Come out with all your weather. Oh, down here. I'll tell you what, I was lucky. They didn't tell us when they were going to turn the electricity off. And once you turn the electricity off, you're toast here, basically. And so we had some good friends that live about, I'll say, driving 15 minutes away, different part of where we are. And they weren't losing their electricity. So we ended up staying there for 4 days, 4 nights. And we would come down to our house every day. Sometimes the electricity was on and it was a little bit warm, and in other days it was freezing cold. I lucked out. I had nothing wrong with my house. It's perfect, but my swimming pool is going to be trashed. I mean, I don't think I have a pipeline anywhere that's not cracked or broke, and the seals are broke. So I'm not worried. To me, a swimming pool is optional. The house is mandatory. So, if I get it fixed or if I don't get it fixed, so what? I'm happy. We have good friends that we spent a whole day with 10 of us taking everything out of their house and putting it into a storage unit, because the water was still coming out of the attic into their upstairs ceiling, and then from their downstairs ceiling right on down to the ground level, and all the wood floors and everything. It's just a mess. They're trying to find a temporary home to stay in for the next 6, 7, 8 months. And they aren't the only ones. A lot of people are in that same category. That's why I feel very, very lucky.
how much time did you spend in the U2, Rich?
The U2, I only tell people, don't ever say Rich Graham flew it operationally. I just flew it when I was the wing commander. They came down with a message from SAC headquarters, and it said, "We want all the wing commanders to fly all of the wings airplanes." And I looked at it and I looked at it and I said, "Wow, this is great. I'm not gonna question this at all." So I went and I got in the U-2 and I soloed out in it and I flew it on training missions only around the United States. I flew it. I went down to Castle and I got a KC-135 checkout because that's one of our airplanes. We got 2 squadrons. So I got a checkout for the left seat. Then my only requirement was I had to have a instructor pilot in the right seat, but I was doing all the work, and they were just sitting there just in case something went wrong. So my last year and a half, I got to fly the U-2, KC-135s, T-38s, anyone could fly then. And I got 2 rides, my token rides in the SR71 my last year. It was good. Oh, and to top it all off, I went down on weekends. I was an instructor at the BO Flying Club. I went down there, I think in my year and a half, I think I sold out about six enlisted people, a couple girls, a couple guys. I like teaching, and I like getting down to the grassroots. So that's what I did on my weekends. I get down and fly the little stuff.
There was I read about the U-2 and how much power is required by the sensors. Imagine the sensors were power hogs from the SR71 as well.
They were. Yeah, and I only know that, I don't know that from practice, because when I was flying, I'm just flying training sorties all around the United States, and we didn't use many capability of the airplane, just a little bit about, basic navigation through the view sight and stuff like that. Now today, there's a lot of juice going through all that stuff up there now. Yeah, still a viable airplane.
Rich, how many hours in the F4?
Oh, I never got the hours. The only number I really know is the 210 combat missions. 210.
That's times that by like 4.
I can't remember. 4 years. That'd be 4 years. I don't know what I got up. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I enjoyed the F4. Yeah, I got another talk on the F4 because I was a wild weasel in it. That's a whole new ball game.
How long has it been since you could talk about the SR71? Because in the 70s, you wouldn't have been able to give this talk, right? I'm assuming.
Just a little bit louder. I can't hear.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Now, yeah, just a little closer. There you go.
I was on a headset, so can you hear me? Okay.
Oh,
sorry.
Very good now.
Okay. So how long has it been that you've been able to talk about the SR71? Because I know in 71 or in the 70s, I don't think anybody heard about it.
Oh, you couldn't talk. It became declassified when it did that. Remember, I said they all retired in 90. Then they came back from 94, 95, 96. And after that last retirement, NASA started using a couple of them for high-speed testing for what they call a linear spike engine on the back of an SR71. And that's when they started opening up all the parameters, the speeds, and the altitudes back then. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what allowed me to write all the 5 books that have all the stuff that was classified at one time.
Yeah.
Rich, what could you tell us about the D-21?
The D-21 drone program, it was short-lived. It was, Kelly was looking for another way of how to get the intel deep into China, deep into Russia, and not peripheral. And he thought about a drone program, and that's what he did. The drones worked out. Unfortunately, launching it off of the mothership, another SR71, if you will, or A-12 modified, and it wasn't a good deal because that's where they crashed. It came off. The idea was to launch the drone on the back of a A-12 at Mach 3, and then it would just sort of drift off and then go on its own course at Mach 3. Well, it did that on one mission, very good. Number 2, number 3. On the 5th mission out over the Pacific, these are all test missions out over the Pacific, it veered real severe to the left and broke the rudder of the mothership. And the front seater and the back seater ejected. The back seater drowned in the Pacific. And Kelly Johnson said right then and there, he said, That's the end of the program. Too much risk, too little reward. Now they had 50 drones built. So what the hell are they going to do with that? So they said, let's use them in this way. We'll take the drones and put them underneath the wings of a B-52G model, no, H model, on the inboard pylons, and put one on the left and one on the right on the inboard, and we'll launch it like deep into China, towards China, and it would then fly deep into China, do a pre-programmed course, come out over international waters, eject a palletized load of intelligence, and have a C-130, which I'm sure you've seen with a boom on front, and they snag the boom, the parachute, and you got your intelligence. Well, of the 5 missions, they only got, I believe, they were shot into China. I believe that only 3 came out. 2 of them they lost, but 3 of them they actually snagged. But the intelligence was sort of meaningless, and they just said it's not worth it anymore. So that was just like a little test. In fact, I have a good friend, General Pat Halloran. Some of you might have heard of his name, but Pat Halloran, he was our wing commander when I came into the SR program. He's been over in China, and he went to one of the museums in China, and he saw one of our that drone was in a air museum over in China.
I also read about some kind of fuel additive that they tried out in the SR71 to basically to ionize the contrails, and it would sort of work like chaff. I don't know if that was a test or it ever became operational or.
No, never. You never pull a contrail.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the only way you can make a contrail, we used to make contrails if you want. I just take the little switch up in the front, and it's my fuel dump board. So once you throw the switch on to dump your fuel, what you want to do for emergencies, you want to reduce your gross weight, you just throw the switch at 80,000 feet. It'll put out a stream of really far. In fact, there's one movie out there, it has it. You can see this. It's called Letter to Kelly Johnson. Look it up on online, Letter to Kelly Johnson. And you'll see in there, you'll see a Mach 3 pass, and you'll see the contrail going out of it. Well, that's not a contrail from the engine. That's from him dumping fuel. Yeah, Letter to Kelly Johnson. It's really good. I think it'll be on somewhere, I'm sure. It lasts about 7 minutes, and it pays homage to the guy who really deserves it in building the SR71. And it's the whole focus of the 7 minutes. It's on the SR71.
Just for your information, I live about 2.5 miles from a road called Kelly Johnson Road, and it's dedicated with him. And he grew up in a town called Ishpeming, Michigan, about 15 miles away from me.
Wow, I knew he was Michigan. I just didn't know where. Oh, that's neat.
Smart individual.
Yeah, he was. He was everyone I know that worked for him that was still alive. There, not many are there now, but they said he was a real taskmaster. I mean, he wanted results, and he wanted you down there on the floors where everyone's bending metal. He didn't want you up in your ivory tower, just profonicating about this and that. He wants you down on the floor where you can actually do something.
It's amazing when you think all that it was designed by slide rules and hundreds and hundreds of people on drafting tables and no way to calculate the absolute minimum what you could get away with in the design. It's that's why a lot of those older planes still around. They're basically overbuilt. Pretty impressive.
Yeah. Okay, wind it up.
Yeah, let's wind it up, Rich. Thanks again for doing this. It was a great presentation, very interesting, and appreciate your service to our country, and best wishes to you.
Okay, I do the same thing for same outcome.
Yeah.
If you want to hear if you ever want to do the Wild Weasel F4 in Vietnam, just let me know. I can do that one too.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you. Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Good night. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good program.
Very good program.
Yeah.
I could have probably thought about another dozen questions, but God only put 24 hours in one day.
Right. Well, I'm gonna exit. I'll see you Saturday, Jerry.
See you guys.
Were you working on that 172? Oh, Chris left already.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm here. You're here?
Yeah, you working on the 172 or what are you working
Yeah,
on?
I was, I had a, I have the safe air drain valve in the, on the gascolator. And, when you look at the safe air valve, you should see a circlip and then you should see half the O-ring, because the O-ring actually keeps the piston of the valve from like, coming out under spring pressure. If the O-ring disappears and it's just hanging on the circlip, it basically means that your O-ring has extruded itself. Half of it got sheared off, if you would.
Yeah.
When I got to the hangar yesterday, there was just a little bit of a seep on the floor, and I put a piece of paper under it, and I came back, 10 minutes later, and there was a drop. So I said, oh, okay, I got to take out that valve. So I took out that valve, and then just about the same time, I get a question from one of the guys in England that had bought a Piper Colt, and he was saying that he couldn't get the O-rings and he couldn't get any valves, and he was going to have to wait like 5 weeks, from LAS to get one, because they were obviously going to get one from the US. So it was quite fortuitous that I actually had samples like in my hand, literally, when he started messaging me. So so I got that squared away. I went by the chapter hangar today. There was a Diet Pepsi in the refrigerator that must have like exploded violently from the ice. I mean, the can from the bottom to the top, right along like a straight line, it just blew, and it just blew like ice everywhere inside that tray of the refrigerator where it was. So I went ahead and I took that. I'm taking it home so I can clean out the tray. So clean up that part of the refrigerator. So, and then I had left my phone at the hangar here at Fleming yesterday. So all day today I had no phone, because otherwise I would have called up like Dale or somebody like that, because I don't think Dale knows how to use, the Zoom. His computer is capable of it. He'd probably, like to learn how to do it, but I ran out of time. Basically, I couldn't go by his house and help him out. I'm surprised that, a lot of the membership, I couldn't really see. What was it, like 20, 30 people?
One time,
a lot of
one
them.
time there was like 40, but then some people dropped off. And there were some names I didn't recognize, so I think there were some guests.
Yeah. So I sent messages like to my son, you need to watch this, but he's probably working, so he never saw it. But I didn't even see like Tom Youngdahl. I know he's off, and he wasn't on.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of names that I would have expected to see. Bob Poor.
Yeah.
Greg, I didn't see Greg on. So
yeah, I'm surprised that it's a lot more interesting to me to have the ability to ask questions, live versus watching something on YouTube. And
oh yeah. Well, the airfield, there was that aerial photograph, and he goes, oh, I don't know what airfield that is. That was Mildenhall. So
okay.
I thought it was Mildenhall, and then I went and checked, and it is Mildenhall. So yeah. So, but and then Fort Hood was the other place that he was talking about that he couldn't remember. So yeah. So anyway, So those pieces of metal, right? You know, I had a left and a right,
Yeah,
and I made the left one on the right side of the piece of metal. I made the right one on the left side of the piece of metal. So it was like I got it all done, and I said, the bend is the wrong way. The bend is supposed to be in, not out. And it's like, you know, and they're different pieces. So I'm going to have to, I have another piece of metal. I'm going to have you bend it up for me. So, but this time, instead of doing 13 millimeters, we'll do, you know, which is half an inch, because of the radius of bend is kind of, it's, you know, it's a big radius and it doesn't give me a lot of room for the hardware there. We'll go with like 5/8 or 11/16 or something. I can always carve out a little bit of extra. Yeah, I could always trim a little bit of extra, or some of the extra material. I could trim it out of off the edge and just leave it wide where the hardware is. So, and that's it. Other than that, trying to think what else. That's really about it. So
it's
45 degrees down in Faribault today. So
yeah, pretty nice.
this is crazy for, I mean, this spring is it's pretty, yeah, I mean, who needs summer when you can have winter like this, right?
Yeah.
In Minnesota. Yeah. So
is that,
okay.
is that Kim
What?
Johnson? Is that Kim Johnson character still watching the F-22s down there in Florida?
Well, yeah, he sent some message to me via a text message while the presentation was going on, but the spelling was all off. And I didn't answer him. What? Yeah, well, or 3 or 4, or 6 or 8.
I am here
Yeah.
watching those S-22s or
Yeah.
F-22s. They are really fun.
Yeah.
I
See,
heard that they moved them. They told me they moved them to England, just northwest of here, about an hour, 66.
Where are you right now?
Panama City Beach.
You are in Panama City. Okay. So yeah, Tyndall is right there, and that's where they have all the drones. You know, the fast drones. I'm not talking UAVs. I'm talking the drones that they send out, and the guys learn how to fire missiles. They have a live fire and a range out there, and they actually shoot down the drones. So, you know, there is a chance you might see like an F-4 Phantom. And you're like, why do I see an F-4 Phantom? I thought the Air Force got rid of them. Well, it's actually probably remote control. And it's a QF-4, and they're flying it out over the Gulf of Mexico. So some guy in an F-16 can take off out of MacDill and go and intercept it and shoot it down. So
cool. I will look for it, but what I'm seeing are F-22s, and they're out of England, just 65 miles northwest of here. There's 187 left.
England.
187 left, as I understand. But they got wind, you know, the swept wings. You know, so they're not F-18s. They're not 16s. So I'll try to get a video of them, but they're damn fast. But it's kind of cool because they go down the beach and they give us a knife edge pass down the beach. That's kind of fun. So
well, I remember when they flew that F-22 over at Oshkosh, remember? And they were going to do a display, and they ended up doing it like not over the runway, but they did it like out over like the other side of the freeway. I mean, it was like way on the wrong side of the airport. It's like, what are they doing? But the only thing I could think is that they wanted to do it in such a way that the lighting was such that people's cameras wouldn't get anything other than like a silhouette view of the F-22. Do you remember that?
That's kind of the problem here is I'd be shooting right into the sun. So I wouldn't be able to see anything. So I got to try to capture them overhead, but it's the sound of freedom. It's wonderful. Here they circle around here often.
Okay, good. So, okay, well, I'm going to sign off. So
okay.
See, when are you coming back, Kim? When are you coming back up?
I come back the first week of April.
Okay,
Looking forward
really
to
nice
seeing you
weather.
guys again.
Yeah, I mean, it's nicer weather here than it is down in Florida.
So, yeah, really.
Still get to wear
absolutely.
wool and everything. I love wearing wool and but yet I don't even need a hat, you know.
Looking
So
forward to some projects.
what's going on with the Pete project? Where are they now?
We're still trying to get the thing painted. The last we did was last organized painting for last we did was October.
Did you
So,
spray at that point? Were you spraying?
no, we
by
haven't
then?
sprayed yet. We've got the brush primer on.
So okay, and you brush
Ready
that,
for-
or can you roller it too?
I understand that the primer, the brush primer is all we can do. Now we spray. I
Okay.
don't know,
No.
four.
But what I'm asking is the brush primer. Can you put that on with a roller as well as a brush, or can you can only use a brush?
We just used a brush.
Okay, and then does it flow out real smooth so you can't even see the brush marks?
We worked hard. Yeah, you were there. You were there one time.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I was there that one time, but all we did was we were setting up the booth.
Everything looked good.
Yeah.
Everything is looking good. Jim says we're doing okay.
Okay.
So,
That's
but